Welcome back to another session of Just Me podcast. And today we are joined by the amazing Eric O'Gray. So, Eric, who are you and what do you do?
I am the territory manager for True Manufacturing, which makes luxury refrigeration for high-end homes, and life is just great.
So, let's go back 9 years. So, I watched a video 9 years ago, but lead up to that particular point.
Well, I was in a situation that I was almost 400 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, my mom, who was 5'2", was also 400 pounds, so definitely ran in the family.
Wow.
And I was 5'10", so it wasn't quite as bad, but my life was miserable in every way. I was on 15 different medications. My blood pressure was through the roof. All of my medical stats were terrible. My A1C was about 12.5, which is really bad. I was taking about 100 units of insulin a day for type 2 diabetes and had the gamut of medical problems. And I just, was really, really fed up with it and had really given up hope that anything was ever going to change. I'd struggled with weight my entire life. I had been relatively thin once when I was very young, and when I went in the army when I was 17, and when I got out of the army, I was still relatively fit. But after that, my weight just crept up year after year after year. And what I noticed was that just overeating a little bit, or following, eating junk food mostly, following an unhealthy diet. If you just put on, even 8 or 10 pounds a year over the course of a couple decades,
Mm,
that's a plus 200-pound weight problem, and which is what I had.
wow. And then you went on a journey, didn't you, on the plane?
Yeah, so what happened was, and as I talked about in the movie or the video, and I talk about this in the book extensively, I had been in a situation where I really stopped going outside except when absolutely necessary. I was living in a small apartment, and it got so bad that I didn't really even use the community laundromat, where you do wash your clothes.
Mm,
And I started ordering replacement underwear and socks on Amazon,
wow.
and it was so bad that after I'd wear them once because I didn't want to wash them, but I still also didn't want to throw them out. I just kind of threw them in a corner of a spare bedroom, and those amassed to maybe 1,000 pairs of underwear and socks in that bedroom over a period of years. And so I was fortunate in that I was in outside sales, so I really I could earn a living over the phone for the most part, just by talking to people. But even with different employers, you still had to go to company meetings on at least a annual or semi-annual basis. But I'd been working for remote manufacturers, so I was the field or territory manufacturer, and it would be for an employer that was in like a long distance state, somewhere like far away, and I was their local guy for that market. And yet I still found ways that I could earn a living without actually going outside. And that was just by mostly calling my client and staying in touch with my clients, because as I learned, people are happy with you
Yeah.
as long as you answer phones, emails, and texts very quickly. They think that you're, a very responsive person, and you don't really need to have a whole lot of in-person visits to make that work. But on this particular occasion, I'd been summoned by my company, which was General Electric. I worked for GE Appliances at the time. They asked me to come out to a company sales meeting in Louisville, Kentucky. So I of course had to do that because it was part of the job. So I went out to the sales meeting, and on my way home, I had a fairly significant life changing experience, as I describe in the
Mm,
film that you've seen. And that was basically when you get on a plane. These planes, as you know, the planes are designed with seats that are roughly the same width as those allocated to middle school children on a school bus. So the width of an airline seat is roughly the same proportion that you'd put a 13 to 15-year-old child in on a school bus. And so walking onto that plane, when you're that weight, when you're that big, I had a 54-inch waist at the time, and it was
wow.
about 400 pounds. So the first thing you notice when you get on the plane is that every single person on that plane has a look of fear or horror in their eyes. And that shows, please God, don't let this guy sit next to me. And
Wow.
so walking onto the plane, you're putting up with that. You're getting down, you're edging down to your seat. I had to do the crab walk sideways just to get down the aisle because the my girth really doesn't even fit down the aisle of the plane without like rubbing up against every single person I went past. So you walk sideways down the plane, and to my horror, when I got to the seat, it was a middle seat, and it was already occupied by two other people. And you
Yeah.
look at them with a sense of apology in your eyes, and they're just they hang their head because they absolutely don't want to sit next to you because you know what's going to happen. My fat basically rolled over both of the armrests by several inches, probably 3 or 4 inches on each side. So the persons that you're sitting next to are resigned to having your body press up against theirs for an entire flight. And this was roughly a 3.5, 4 hour flight back to California. So it was not insignificant. I got down in the middle seat, and the guy next to me was Korean, and he was very unhappy about the situation. And so the first thing I did was I hit the call button overhead, and I summoned the flight attendant, and I let her know that I needed a seatbelt extension because the belt wouldn't
Yeah.
stretch across my waist. And so she went to go look for a seatbelt extension and quickly discovered that they had run out of them on the plane. There were none left by the time that I was seated. So they had to delay the flight for about 45 minutes until they could get a seatbelt extension off of another plane over to ours. And this, it became very clear to me that people were going to miss their flight connections. The Korean gentleman next to me said, yeah, I won't try to repeat the accent, but he said, I'm going to miss my flight because you're so fat. And, I just felt that didn't make me angry. I just felt more shame because of that. I mean, very deep shame because I'd been in the US Army, and I had always felt that I'd been very proud about handling my own responsibilities, never being in a situation that I was impinging upon somebody else's freedom or liberty, that I could do everything myself and that I didn't need anybody else, and I didn't certainly ever want to inconvenience anybody else. And so that to me was just the ultimate situation in that I was horrified that what was next after that. Was I going to have to be pushed around by people? Was I my situation was going to start unfortunately negatively impacting other people's lives as it did on this day.
Yes.
And I just really felt that that situation was unacceptable and was horrified by it.
Wow. So what then? I mean, after that, what then did you do? Did you kind of go, right, something needs to change?
Yeah, so I had up to that point, I had really tried every situation ever marketed to the American public on weight loss. I'd
Wow.
tried, the Atkins diet, which is effective. It's currently called keto, but it used to be
Yeah.
Atkins. And that is, if you don't eat any carbs and you eat all meat, your body will go into something called ketosis
Yeah.
and will put you in a situation that it is easier to drop weight that way. But the problem is, it's truly easy to drop 30 to 40 pounds in ketosis. However, you start craving carbohydrates so bad that it becomes uncontrollable. It's more like running a marathon. You can run a marathon, but you can't run a marathon perpetually. You can't run a marathon forever.
Yeah.
You, at some point, break from that regimen. And when you do, the weight comes flooding back and more. So every time that I went on the Atkins diet, and again, that's currently keto, I not only regained what I lost, but I always seem to find like an additional 10% weight penalty associated with the effort.
Wow.
And that was with everything else I tried also. Like there's a brand of weight loss nutrition products in the United States called Nutrisystem.
Mhm.
So with Nutrisystem, what you do, you sign up and then they send you this box, a couple boxes of food, and you're supposed to eat this food for 30 days. And you're supposed to follow this exact meal plan and eat the food for 30 days. And the problem with, if you, it's a limited calorie diet. And if you follow it exactly, you would actually lose the weight. But the problem is that you're still hungry after you eat this limited portion. So you then eat like more than one portion. And so I, on the Nutrisystem diet, I ate the entire box, the two boxes, I think in less than a week, I recall. And so then I called back Nutrisystem and I said, how long is this product supposed to last? And they said 30 days. And I said, well, then if that was a certain 30-day supply, you better send me like 8 or 9 more boxes because that's what I'm going to need for 30 days. So that wasn't a weight loss solution for me, because it wasn't calorie limiting. So I tried everything else, including, amphetamines and really every type of medical
Wow.
plan ever mounted for weight loss, and none of them worked ever. And as I mentioned, I was always able to lose some weight, but then as soon as I backslid and got off that particular program and failed, I would not only regain the weight, but an additional penalty. And that's where I was. So the next day after I got back from that flight from Louisville to California, I flipped off on the TV, and this was in August 2010. I'll never forget it. Bill Clinton, former president of the United States, was being interviewed by Wolf Blitzer on CNN. And Wolf stopped the interview at one point and said, Mr. President, I just have to ask you, physically, you look great. You look better than I can remember you looking in the last 10 years. What have you been doing? And that's true because Bill Clinton was well known at the time for, he would go out and jog, but then jog over to a McDonald's, and the Secret Service would
Yeah.
follow him to McDonald's, and he would eat that unhealthy food there. And then, so that's what he was known for. And Wolf said, your eyes are clear, the sockets, and he just looked great. His face was oval instead of round. The hollows under his eyes were gone. He just looked really good. And so he explained that he had been working with a new set of doctors who had put him on something called a plant-based diet.
Right.
And of all the different things that I had ever done in my life to try to lose weight, and had been at that point about 20 different things, really every fad diet ever introduced in America, I'd never heard of a plant-based diet. And so I then started Googling Clinton plant-based diet, and it came up. That was in August 2010. Zero search results. Now, if you did that same result right
Yeah.
now, you'd find over 30 million search results on Google.
Wow.
True story. Just try it. Clinton plant-based diet.
Okay.
So I then started. I was really good on computers, and really good at using Google and finding stuff and researching stuff because I never really left my home. So I kept looking, and the next day I looked for a doctor who knew something about a plant-based diet because I had to find somebody who knew how to do this, because if it worked for Bill Clinton, I knew that it could work for me too.
Brilliant.
And I was definitely wanting to try this. So I called around and I called around, and nobody knew what I was talking about until eventually I called, and a very nice Indian woman answered the phone. And I asked her, I said, do you know what a plant based diet is? And she said, yes. And in fact, I follow that myself.
Wow.
So I made an appointment with her and I went in. And it was a very unusual meeting. And her name is Dr. Preeti, Preeti Kulkarni, Kulkarni. And I think she's currently practicing in Cupertino, California,
Uh-huh.
in case anybody wants to look her up. But I went in, and it was a very unusual experience. It was different than any medical doctor experience that I'd ever gone through, because as part of all of the things that I'd ever done to lose weight and go to doctors, I had developed a string of 15 different medications that I was taking every day, like bottles of pills
Wow.
lined up on my bathroom counter in my bathroom at home, just like bottles of pills lined up, that every day I would take 15 different medications and stick myself with a needle and doing all these different things. And as a part of all of this, every time that I went to a doctor, I noticed something in particular. And that was, while I was talking to the doctor, they held a prescription pad in one hand and a pen in the other. And they seemed intent on getting me to reveal what my chief complaint was for the day. So, what was my biggest
Right.
medical problem that I was experiencing for that day? And as part of experiencing that medical problem, they would all, and qualifying me to see, okay, what is the problem that you're here for today? They also had a complete list of all the other medications that I was on. So, what they were intent upon doing, their whole purpose was to either reschedule or reorganize all the medications that I was on, or to prescribe me a new medication to respond to the complaint that I had that day that I was saying, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted, I have sleep apnea, I'm just sore all the time. I just, my back hurts. Whatever the situation was, I'm starting to feel lightheaded all the time. Oh, please God, do something about this weight. They would spend about 15 minutes with me because the economics of their medical practice was such that they had to see under the American medical system, they probably had to see somewhere in the nature of 12 to 20 patients a day to make their practice work.
Okay.
And as part of making their practice work, then they had to like rush through the meeting. And so rushing through the meeting meant, diagnosing me for whatever kind of thing I was complaining about most that day, and then writing a prescription for me so that I would go home with a new medication or a rebalance of my existing medications that would hopefully solve whatever problems that I was complaining about. But see, they never did. All it ever did was cause me to take more and more and more medications and become sicker and sicker and sicker, to the point that I was taking medications to remediate or alleviate the side effects of other medications. So all this stuff just stacked up and was unworkable. So when I went into Dr. Preeti that morning, I was just shocked by something totally different that I never experienced before. And that was she wasn't holding a prescription pad or a pen, and she spent an hour and a half asking me questions, complete life history.
Wow.
How did all of this happen, and what happened, and what occurred, and really the complete life history. And she got me to admit all these embarrassing things that I'd never really talked to anybody about before, especially a doctor. Like, I'd completely stopped going outside. I was 50 years old at the time. I'm 66 now, but I was 50 years old at the time. I didn't have any friends, not no friends. I didn't have any interaction with anybody. All I did was sit at home and just prayed for like whatever kind of relief I could get from somewhere. And basically, I was sitting at home waiting to die. And in fact, one of the doctors that I had previously visited told me that I had, in his estimation, less than 5 years to live on my medical stats and my medical condition. He said, you might as well start researching for a cemetery plot because you're going to need one within 5 years. So that really hit
No
home.
way.
In addition to the airplane incident.
No
So
way.
really, at the end of my hour and a half meeting with Dr. Preeti that morning, she got me to agree to not just like come in that day to solve whatever kind of perceived problem I had that day. What you talked about mostly was she was searching for the underlying cause of all of my problems. And she explained it to me like this. She said, if you turn on the sink and it's stopped up, the water is just going to run out. Now, if you're not treating the underlying cause of the
Yeah.
problem, you're simply going to mop up the water until the end of time. But if you're treating the underlying cause of the
Amazing.
problem to stop the problem, you're going to turn off the water. And she said that's what she aimed to do with me.
Brilliant.
And that's
Brilliant.
what she wanted to do with me. And so I said, wow, that's amazing. And so she said, what she was diagnosing me at is the problems that I was having was poor nutrition, a complete lack of social interaction with anybody else.
Yeah.
And she said if she was able to help me to understand how to eat correctly and how to do all this, and then cause me to like, get some friends and get some social interaction going, she felt that she could have me off all of my medications and be significantly nearer to my optimal weight in about a year.
Wow.
And I said, how is that even
Wow.
possible? Why isn't every doctor in
Yeah.
America practicing medicine this way? And I was just blown away by that. And so I said, well, what can we do? And she said, well, I'm prescribing two things. First, I'm going to have to teach you how to cook, because all I was doing at the time, I was calling it the window diet, right? So I would roll up through the drive-through in America. You can get anything you food, and they hand it to you through your car window, right? So it's the window diet. So she said, and I didn't know how to cook. I mean, I didn't know how to do anything. I mean, I was at 50 years old. I had never really prepared any of my own food. I just always bought it at restaurants. And the next thing she said two things. I'm going to have to teach you how to cook, here's a list of recipes. I want you to go to your supermarket on the way home and pick up all the ingredients listed on these sheets. And I want you to actually prepare these meals that are listed. And I said, okay. I formally, absolutely agreed and surrendered myself to do exactly what she was suggesting, what she was asking me to do. And I was no longer going to try to rely upon my own understanding. I was going to do exactly as she said, because she seemed like the first doctor that I'd ever worked with that actually cared about me personally
Wow.
and was willing to spend the time to invest in me personally. And
Wow.
so I rolled with that. And then she said, the next thing, I am prescribing a dog. And I said, well, I said, I'd never had a dog before. I said, "Can I get a cat instead?" And she said, "Have you ever walked a cat?" And I said, "No, but I think I've seen it done on television." And she just looked at me rather sternly, and
Oh,
she said, "I want you to contact Humane Society of Silicon Valley." And they're the people who made the film, the
yeah, yeah.
movie the short film that you saw. I want you to contact Humane Society Silicon Valley and adopt a shelter dog from them. And I said, well, why do I need a dog? And she said, well, it's going to force you to do two things. First, the dog's going to have to go to the bathroom, and you're going to have to walk the dog
Wow.
every day. And that's going to it's going to force you to go outside, and it's going to force you to get some exercise. And she said, as part of doing all that, you'll probably meet some people too. I said,
Wow.
okay. So get some sun on your skin, get some exercise. And then she said, you're going to have a relationship with that dog. He said, you don't have a relationship with a person right now, but that dog is going to be a very deep relationship. And I bet it'll change your life. And so I thought, wow. So I left her office that day and I went to the grocery store and I made my way through the grocery store and I went home with all the things and I tried to prepare what she was talking about in the recipes, and it was like beans and rice or something. And I actually set off the fire alarm to my apartment building because that's how bad it was in terms of my cooking skills. And so everybody in my apartment complex was outside looking at me, and I was the source of the problem. And
Wow.
anyway, so that was a great lesson learned in that you have to watch the stove when you prepare food. You can't just like turn it on and go off and do something else. So that, and then the very next day, I called Silicon Valley Humane Society, and I talked to a person and they transferred me to special needs dogs because I said, am calling because I want to adopt a dog. And my doctor said, I need an obese middle-aged dog. So we have something in common. And
Wow.
they said, we have the perfect dog for you.
Wow.
And I said, wow, the perfect dog. So when I was thinking of the perfect dog, what was going through my mind was an 8-pound golden retriever, a dog that would never, the dog that would never bark or
Oh.
it was just would look nice and would cuddle on my lap and everything and would never ever give me any problems and would never pee or poop in my apartment and just like golden curls and the dogs. That's what I had in mind. So I went down for my appointment the following day to look at my perfect dog, and they bring me to a dog adoption room, a pet adoption room. So all the floors were concrete and everything because they got to hose the place out. And so I'm sitting in this room and I hear this sound of thuds coming down with nails clacking against concrete. So it sounded like, I'm thinking, dang, that sounds like Godzilla coming down the hallway. And the adoption coordinator that I was working with brought in this dog who was grossly overweight, had,
Oh.
skin problems. His skin was red. It looked like he was missing patches of hair. His head was hung low, looking up like at the ground. He
Oh.
looked like, he'd given up on life entirely. And I looked at the adoption coordinator and I said, well, where's my dog?
Oh.
And so the dog looked up at me and looked back at the
Oh.
adoption coordinator like he was looking, he was
Yeah.
expressing the same concerns that I was. It was crazy. So she then really kind of like walked me through the situation, and she said, "Well, you told me you wanted something in common with a dog, and can you look at this dog here and tell me that you don't have anything in common with this dog?" And
Oh.
she said that this dog is what you need, and she really
Oh.
convinced me of that. So
Wow.
I decided to give this dog a try. So I take this dog home to my apartment, and I'm sitting in this apartment, and I take this dog home, and the dog is really leery of me at first, doesn't know what to think.
Oh,
And so I sit on the couch and the dog kind of sits in the corner and we're kind of like looking at each other crossways.
yeah, yeah.
And so, we had a few shared experiences. I started to, the dog started to warm up to me a little bit, and I named him Peety, Peety, after a dog that I saw on there was a film or a like some really old TV series called The Little Rascals in the United States
Okay.
that had like, these young kids and they had a dog named Petey. And, so
Oh,
I always thought that if I ever had a dog, I'd name him Petey too. And here he was. So I named him Petey because he's a very loyal, protective dog. And as Petey was also. So the first time we got off the couch to go on a walk and we walked about 100 yards and we were both like totally exhausted and wiped out and had to come back home. And I like laid down on the couch and he laid down in his corner.
oh,
And we did this for days.
wow,
And, every day we walked a little bit farther.
wow,
And so on the third night, and I'll never understand how he did this because he was about, close 40, 50 pounds overweight easily. He hopped up on the bed that night and he put his head on my chest
oh,
and we became forever bonded after
oh,
that.
how lovely is that?
Yeah. After
Wow.
that, I don't know if you saw the movie Avatar, but where they bond with the
Yeah,
blue bird type creatures.
yeah,
And it's like it's two creatures experiencing the same two creatures turn into one. And that's what
yes.
happened with me and Petey. It was like a complete and utter bonding experience.
How lovely.
So that I knew that I had to be successful at this because if I died, what would happen was nobody else would want him
Oh,
and he would be immediately euthanized and that would be the end of the rope for him. So
wow.
he looked at me like I was the greatest person to
Oh,
ever walk the planet.
oh,
He looked at me like I was his complete salvation, that
oh,
I was everything to him. And I could tell he was so invested into me that, like, when we would walk into a room, he would sit in the doorway to protect me from
oh,
anybody who could
that's
possibly
lovely.
walk through that doorway.
So
And that's where he stationed himself anytime that, except for like at night when his goal 100% was as my protector.
yeah.
And I thought, I want to become the person that my dog thinks that I am.
Oh,
And so I just became resolved to totally be that person, to totally be an excellent person, fix all of my problems, fix all of my medical problems, and really become healthy again. And as a part of doing that, to help him also. And so we rescued each other. And I followed Dr. Preeti's nutrition plans exactly. And truly, within less than 3 months, I was off all 15 medications. I was off the insulin, I was off everything.
wow.
My body weight was dropping like a rock. I was losing up to 5 pounds a week, and, over a period of time, just doing nothing more than walking, no heavy exercise, just walking only
Wow.
and
Wow.
eating healthy plant-based foods. And in doing this, I lost all of the weight. I lost, close to 200 pounds in a year. It just came
Wow.
off like that. It was just like a miracle,
Wow.
like something I'd never experienced before. Petey lost 50 pounds. He was like
Wow.
looking really good too. I was looking great. We were both like jumping around. So we went from
Wow.
walking 100 yards the first time to walking 3 miles at lunch and then 3 miles in the evening. So
Wow.
6 miles a day. And it was like the perfect combination for us. My waist size dropped from 54 inches to 34 inches.
Jeez.
And my end weight was about 180 pounds down from about 400.
Wow.
So it was just a miracle. And as part of that, I then went back to Dr. Preeti and I said, what do I do now? Because okay, so the problem is gone, but I want to sustain this, and I really kind of want to do this. So she said, you need to find a form of social activity that involves exercise
Brilliant. Brilliant.
that a lot of other people do. And so I thought about that. And so I thought maybe I could, try running or something like that. Cause I looked it up. There's like a
Yeah.
lot of running clubs and various different things. So I looked it up and I found running clubs, 50 to 100 people that had like daily runs and things like that. So I decided I was going to try that. And the first day, I didn't run very far, but then, within about a week or so, I'd gotten up to being able to run 4 or 5 miles,
No
which is
way.
pretty significant.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and then, really within a few months, I had gotten to the point that I could run a half marathon, and shortly after that, I ran a full marathon. So,
Wow,
just jump into
amazing.
the final position on that. Within the next, 5 or 6 years, I ran 35 full marathons.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy, and about 100 half marathons. So it became a significant social activity for me. Now, I don't really run anymore because, I have no medical problems. I'm 66 years old now.
Oh, lovely, Eric.
And I'm taking 0 medications, right? No medications. So 66 years old, no medications. And so I'm totally happy with my health and everything else at this point. But I found that I didn't really need to do extreme exercise to lose weight or maintain my weight because what I found is, and this is my strongly held belief, that extreme exercise is actually not a good idea or
Yeah,
conducive to weight loss. And the reason is for a number of reasons. First, when you're trying to like really, you're trying to go to the gym every day, or you're trying to like, do X number of steps every day, you're trying to do, you're trying to run a certain distance in terms of miles per week or whatever the situation is, you're going to get burned out. And
yeah,
when you get burned out, you're just going to completely crash, go off the cliff, and go back to your old bad habits because, oh my God, I failed. I can't do that. Here I am back to the same problems again. And then the other thing is when you're doing extreme workouts, what's happening is you're burning a lot of calories in the extreme workouts, but your appetite increases
yeah,
dramatically to the point that it becomes uncontrollable. So if you are running 60 or 70 miles a week, as I was doing, it's true that you can eat 3 meals at every meal.
yeah.
And I was doing that, and it's wonderful because I love like eating large quantities of food. But it's not really conducive to weight loss because what's going to happen is you're going to get a cold or the flu, or you're going to get an injury or some kind of medical problem where you're not able to work out. And the problem is that the amount of food that you eat does not stop or slow down in proportion to the amount of there's like a really long period of time before you stop eating this like large portions of food that you were eating before. And so you gain weight very quickly after you stop working out, and then
Gotcha.
you're back in the same thing. Oh my God, I failed. And what's wrong with me? I can't do this. So the point is that if you're in a situation that you really need to lose a lot of weight, if you eat a whole food plant-based diet, which is for me, I'm 100% vegan. I'm a
Wow.
lifestyle vegan, and I want to talk about this again for a minute because I started out doing it for myself, but once I formed an absolute bond with Petey, and I looked at him and I thought, this animal has a soul, and we are paired, bonded for life, and I could not anymore eat another animal than I could him because I
Wow.
just didn't really see the difference. So it was an epiphany. It was like a really
Wow.
totally powerful spiritual experience. So I became a committed lifestyle vegan after that. But I'm not really telling anybody else what they got to do. I'm not one of these guys who's going to try to shut down traffic to enforce my belief on others.
No.
At this point in my life, I know that I've never, ever gotten anybody to do anything by starting an argument with them. I've never sold anything to anybody by starting an argument with them. And I've been in the sales profession my entire life. So the way that you get somebody to change is to cause them to want what you have. That's how you sell something, is you don't try to sell it. You manifest your lifestyle, and you be a good person, and you just want to be admired and liked by other people to a way that they want to try to fix their life in the way that you fix your life. And if there's anybody out there that's listening to this like that, I will tell you for sure that if you gear up to that, you can walk 3 miles twice a day, and you stop eating junk food, and you eat food in the way that it's been prepared without like a whole lot of ingredients. You're not
Yeah.
buying boxed food at the supermarket. You're not eating frozen food. You're buying the food in the way that it was, formed by nature,
Yes.
and you're learning how to cook, and you're learning how to prepare meals yourself. Over a short period of time, you'll surprise yourself if you really apply yourself, and you'll find that you can make really tasty, palatable meals that are really good and are filling, and you're going to lose still a lot of weight because what's going to happen by walking a couple times a day, that will substantially suppress your appetite. You'll be really surprised that if you walk before lunch and you walk before dinner, you're naturally going to want to eat less food. And the combination of the more nutritious, lower calorie food that has lower amounts of fat in it, right?
Mm.
Going to put you in a situation that you'll just naturally lose weight, and you'll get down to a point at your optimal weight where you say, okay, and then everything feels normal after that. So you're eating a normal amount of food, you're doing just a normal amount of exercise every day, you're moving your body, which is all that's required. No extreme physical exercise is required. Just moving your body, eating healthy food, and then all of your problems in life seem to go away entirely, and you then become the person who you've always wanted to be.
God, lovely as
And
that.
it was an tremendously
Wow.
spiritual experience for me in doing all this.
Wow.
And the Dr. Preeti was right in that I needed a dog to do this.
Yeah, it's just,
So
but don't you, but Eric, don't you think it's amazing that your doctor was called Dr. Preedy, right? The
yes.
dog was called Petey. There's kind it's like, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't know because Preeti is a fair, yeah. I mean that is very nice coincidence. Preeti is, I think, a fairly common
Yeah.
Indian female name, so it just worked out like
Yeah, it's
that.
just amazing.
But everything continued to work out really well for me after that, and to the extent that,
Amazing.
so I followed the Facebook account of Humane Society Silicon Valley
Mm,
where I adopted Petey, and I saw that there was a really amazing person, Finnegan Dowling is her name, and she wrote their newsletter and did their social media feed, and she was very creative and is very gifted at what she did. And so she always had like a feature of a dog that, they had trouble adopting, that they
yeah.
wanted to adopt. And she would write this big story about the dog to make the dog seem like, okay, it's really not so bad. Maybe somebody can come in and adopt this dog. So she had a dog advertised called Eddie the Terrible. And Eddie was a Chihuahua.
Oh,
And I
God.
think she had him written up as the Chihuahua from Satan or something like that.
Brilliant.
So Eddie needed some work, and Eddie was overweight and had like tremendous attitude problems, but he also had some very endearing qualities. And so she wrote this, and I think that newsletter her won an award or something somewhere, but it went viral, and thousands and thousands of views. And so I wrote her and I said, well, maybe you'd like to feature my story because
Wow.
here's me and Petey. And I adopted him from Humane Society Silicon Valley. And this is what happened when I adopted him. And so I sent her photos, before and after photos and everything else. And she said, wow. So they asked me if I'd like to make a short film of my experience. And I said, sure. And by that time, I had moved to Spokane, Washington. And unfortunately, Petey had
Oh,
passed away at
oh,
that point, and it was a very, very, very emotional experience
yeah.
for me. And I won't really get into it, but it was the most profound emotional experience that I'd ever gone through. I held him as he died,
Oh,
and his body shivered when the life
oh,
left him, and it was, he was gone. And what was I going to do after that? Because he was the best friend that I'd ever had.
oh.
So a couple of months after Petey passed away, I met a woman who was just very kind of like, I don't know. She told me, she looked at me and she said, you're going to meet another dog, and when the dog is ready to meet you, he's going to let you know. And so
No
one
way.
day I just had a really powerful urge to go to Seattle Humane Society, which I did, and I went there, and I went into their adoption cages, and every dog, and I don't know if you've ever been to a dog adoption center, but when you walk in, every dog is doing backflips and slamming his
That's
body against the
yeah.
fence and everything,
Yeah.
trying to get your attention because they know what's about to happen. You're
Yeah.
going to pick one of them. They want you to pick them. And this one dog, when I walked in, just looked at me, and I looked at him, and I could tell this was the dog, right? And the look on his face was, dude, let's get out of here.
Oh,
So I picked him up, and they always have some kind of weird name for a dog when you're adopting him, and it's common practice to change the dog's name. So I named him Jake, and we became absolutely best friends. And Jake
oh,
was 4 years old at the time. He'd just been put in the adoption pen about 4 minutes earlier. He didn't even have his paperwork done, so we got
uh,
through all that. I took him home, and we instantly bonded again and became best friends. And Jake is still with me. He is going to be 14 this year,
Wow.
which for a Labrador,
Wow,
average
that's
life of a
old. Yeah.
Labrador is 12, right? So Jake is on the same healthy nutrition that I eat. He's on plant-based
No
nutrition.
way.
Before anybody reacts and
No
says that
way.
that's not healthy for a dog, it is. Dogs are omnivores, so they can exist
Yeah,
healthfully off
yeah.
of a well-planned plant-based diet, and Jake
Wow.
is. So his
Wow.
diet was designed for me by a veterinarian, and that's what he's been on since. So he actually looks and acts like he's still 4 years old. He's like very immature and clownish, and is really good at
Oh,
begging for stuff, and just exactly what you'd expect out of a Labrador. But his hair is still mostly black, and he's got very little silver hair at 14.
that's
So he's
amazing.
extremely healthy. His weight is in proportion to that. Labradors as a breed are very
Yeah.
inclined to be overweight and obese. So his weight is in proportion to his body size and his everything else. And he's just a delight to be around. So I'm hopeful that he'll stay with me for several more years. And so we do all kinds of crazy things together. So if you're interested, you could follow me on Facebook,
Yeah, yeah.
Eric Gray, Ogrey. If you follow me on Facebook, I post like funny pictures of Jake every day, mostly him begging for food and treat stuff and like looking at me like, with he's the world's best salesperson because he can get just about anybody to do anything. And
Oh,
it's a really funny situation. So just to continue on, what happened was, so I went to Spokane, and they Humane Society of Silicon Valley sent up a film crew, and I spent a couple days with this film crew, and we created this video. The video ended up getting so the video is Eric and Peety, EricandPeety, and you can find multiple versions of it on the internet. And so they made this video, and it was released on Valentine's Day 2016, and it went viral immediately. And when I say it went viral immediately, it ended up on various different internet sites, documented getting over 100 million views. So it completely changed my life,
wow.
like right away.
Wow.
It was nuts, man. Over 100 million views, and it completely changed my life. I was getting thousands of emails a day,
Right here.
over a dozen unsolicited marriage proposals,
Did
women I never met.
you?
It was crazy, man, what comes out of the woodwork when that happens.
Wow.
15 minutes of fame, right?
Yeah.
And I was contacted by all these national news organizations and TV shows, and a publicist who asked me if I wanted a book deal and like all this kind of stuff. So I said yes.
Wow.
And suddenly I was on like the Today Show, Rachel Ray. I had an episode on the Hallmark Channel, like a little Christmas
Yeah,
episode
yeah.
on the Hallmark Channel, and just all this like cool stuff. And I did hundreds of podcasts and newspaper articles and things, and the book was really successful, and it's still rated after all this time 4.7 on Amazon out of 5,
Wow.
and it's now published in 9 languages
Wow.
worldwide.
Wow.
So I really felt like I was able to really reach so many people,
No,
and I
super.
I've been contacted, and I've tried to help thousands of people as a result of this experience, and I think that maybe thousands of people have changed their life and,
Yeah,
really
definitely.
become happier as a result of me talking about my experience, and that's what I'm trying to do now. But the best thing that happened as a result of all this was, it's kind of going to blow you away, that it's not in the video because it happened afterwards. When I was in high school, age 16, my girlfriend, her name was Jay. So we were inseparable until I joined the army when I was 17, and I went to Germany, Bamberg, Germany, in the US Army,
Mm.
on an American base there. And so I was bad, and I just, started doing kind of bad things, and I just lost track. I stopped like writing her, and I lost track, and that was the end of that relationship. And so I didn't see her again for 40 years after that. So she saw film, and she contacted me, and
Oh,
lo and behold, we were both single at the time.
no.
It's nuts, I know. So wait, so we got back together, and within a couple of months after that, we got married.
Oh, Eric.
40 years in the wilderness, back together with
Wow.
my high school sweetheart. And we've been living happily ever after. and that was 2017. So it's been about 8 years now
Yes.
that we have
How lovely is
resumed
that?
our relationship, and it's just an absolutely beautiful relationship, and it's working out really well. And I've never been happier in my life, and she's never been happier in her life. And it's part of that whole experience. She had also been overweight,
Gosh.
and by doing the exact same thing that I did, she really lost a bunch of weight and improved her health. And she's absolutely beautiful, and she's really stunning and radiant. And I'm lucky to have her. So everything worked out. It wasn't just like a one-time
Yeah.
deal, me
Yeah.
doing this. Everything worked out. So as part of all this stuff, I went from being on a roughly a 2-year book speaking tour, doing various different things. But I'm a one-hit wonder. I didn't have like a follow-up story or any additional content, and it's all good.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
eventually all that played out and I had to go back to work, and that's what I'm doing now. So I'm back in sales, but I've got a beautiful home in Lodi, California, and super happy, great neighbors, great neighborhood, and just never been happier. My life is great. I've got no problems, and none that I know of anyway. And everything was all fixed, and all because
Yeah.
the doctor
To Preeti.
took time to
Yeah.
invest in me to be different. And rather than doing just what everybody else did, she diagnosed correctly what the situation was and what I needed to do differently. And she really kind of like believed in me, and I believed that I could do. She caused me to believe in myself, and it was really the dog thing. So no matter whatever happens in the rest of my life, I'm so healthy right now. I feel like I'm going to be able to live to be 102, or at least that's the
Wow.
plan.
Wow.
And I'm always going to have a dog, and I'm always gonna get a dog because I'm so bonded with the animal. It's like we think the same way, and like
Yeah.
he looks at me like sideways, and I think, don't even think that, and he stops
Yeah.
doing it. And so that's how I am with the dogs. And no matter what happens for the rest of my life, I'm always going to have a dog, and I'm always going to get that dog, rescue that dog from a pet shelter. And let me just pitch that real quick. Millions of dogs every year are euthanized
Mm.
in the United States because Americans have a fixation with getting a pure breed puppy. So you get these like tremendously horrific puppy mills that have caged dogs that are just putting out litters year after year after year, and are selling the puppies to make a living. The problem is, if you go to a shelter to adopt a dog, about 25% of the dogs there are going to be purebred dogs
Right.
that were such that somebody paid a couple $1,000s for that puppy initially. Oh, so cute. Look, it's a purebred dog. And then what happens is they don't put the time into training the dog. The dog rips up the curtains,
Yeah.
tears the couch apart, pees and poops in the house. And they go, oh, I can't handle this. This is a bad dog. So then they're going to surrender the dog to the shelter, and those dogs get euthanized. It's a very sad experience. So if you go to a shelter and you want a purebred dog, you can get a purebred dog at a shelter today. And the good news is, most of the time, that dog has already been past the point in their life that they are going to tear apart your possessions.
Oh,
They're always going to be housebroken. So you don't need to be an experienced dog owner
yes.
to go out and rescue a dog. You can be somebody who wants a companion, who for that dog to fill a need in your life, right? And you can save that dog, and that dog can save you too. And that dog is going to look at you like the most important person who ever walked the planet, because to that dog you can't rescue every dog in the world, but you can rescue one dog, and that dog is the least among us,
Oh, how
and it's going to
lovely.
be the greatest thing perhaps that ever happened to you. So that's what I recommend.
Oh, lovely. And Eric, if you could describe yourself using one word, what would it be?
I don't know, happy.
Yeah, that's so lovely. Do you know, it's so funny, I mean, I saw that film, in 2016 when it first came out. And as I mentioned, we show it in all the work, well, most of the workshops that we run. And about 6 years ago, a lady do exactly what you did. She went out and she adopted a rescue dog exactly because of
Nice.
your film. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of friends in the UK, and one of the things that I do now, my main side hustle hobby, is I restore. I do professional restorations of vintage British woodworking tools. right?
Mm.
So I'm like a huge hobbyist and fairly well known in this regard now.
Yeah.
So I do like museum quality restorations on British woodworking
Wow.
hand tools down to re-nickel plating parts and really doing so I can take something that has really been abused and neglected over the years and make it look like it just rolled off the factory showroom floor. So I do have an
Yeah.
extensive tool collection in that regard, and I do quite a bit of buying, selling, trading, restoring. And as part of that, I've amassed a lot of British friends that are also
Oh, lovely.
interested in woodworking. So if you're ever in Petersfield, the name of my one of my best friends there is Justin, and he works at a business called Chapel Street, which is vintage tool sales and garden. He restores and resells stuff also. Chapel Street in Petersfield, if you ever get down
I've
there.
made a note of it. Yeah, I'll put
Yeah,
it
so
down. Brilliant.
he's a really nice guy, and he kind of he collects stuff for me and then ships me like large shipments every couple months,
Wow.
and I really appreciate that he does that. So I've made friends as part of this, like all over the world, like healthy, goal oriented, quality, nice people, and that's the kind of people that everybody needs in their life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. But it's interesting, isn't it, that you're restoring tools and you restored, Petey's life, your own life, and other people's lives as well.
Yeah, because nothing or nobody ever needs to be thrown out.
Wow.
Everything can be fixed.
Oh, so lovely. Eric, oh my life! I can't. It's so funny. When I reached out to you how many weeks ago, I never thought, honestly, because I've shown you film and talked about, and obviously, talked about you and whatever, but I never thought that I'd ever meet you, let alone even have a podcast. So I'm so grateful. Seriously, thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm always happy to help.
Oh,
Just,
brilliant. Really
yeah, for sure.
lovely. So, what does the rest of the day look like for you?
Well, today is Memorial Day in the United
Oh,
States,
okay.
so it's a nice holiday. So it's a 3-day weekend, and I'm just going to wrap it up by relaxing and working a little bit in the shop and getting organized and working on my next project.
Oh, lovely. And you're going to go for a walk with Jake?
Absolutely,
Oh,
as
and
soon as
and how many
we
walks a day do you do? Do you do a couple?
just one now.
Just
So
one,
I
yeah.
try to do one walk a day, and that seems to be working for both of us
Oh,
really
lovely.
nicely.
Oh, lovely. Eric, thank you so much. Honestly, lovely to meet you. And
Thank you,
we'll
and Deb,
stay in
please send
touch.
me a link to the podcast when you're done with it so I can publicize it to my followers.
Absolutely will do. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.